Hello there. Welcome to what's now the second part in a series that I actually intended originally to film as one video. And I know a few folks have expressed some disappointment that the original video was a little more focused on the unboxing and not on the device itself. And I definitely apologize for that. My intention was to film this as one piece, but the time gods were not on my side, and I could only get out that first half. And now we're going to focus on the second half, which I think will be a little more of what folks were hoping to see. Before that, however, I do want to just show a couple things that I neglected to mention when we did the hardware review previously. So looking at the Tab Mini C, I just want to point out that and I'll bring this down, hopefully you can see it. The bottom has the charge connector. I know it's a little blurry. Let me see if I can move it back. There we go. You can see the charge connector. You can also see the little dot for the microphone. And then there's grills on the left and the right at the base. On the sides, there's nothing. It's smooth on one side. Let's see if I get it like that. And then if we go to the other side, it's also nothing except for the icon for the magnet connector, which is a little blurry there. And then on top is the power button, and then there's you can't see it, but there's a little light indicator when you're charging the device. So that's the end of the hardware. The way I'm going to conduct the rest of this is we're going to do this comparing these two devices. This is the Tab Mini C. We'll call it the Mini from here on out, if I can remember. And then this is the Nova Air C. We'll call that the Air going forward. Now the Air, as many of you know, is my go-to e-reading device. I think it's the gold standard in combining a number of aspects. I have videos talking about that. In particular, I have one that's fairly well viewed called the Nova Air C is still relevant, so if you want to check that out, that's available. But I think it's a great comparator for the Mini device, and in fact the Mini really is a spiritual successor to this device. So it's going to be interesting to see how these devices perform against each other. A couple of the main differences between the two. Obviously, this is the new Kaleido 3 technology. I believe this is the first device released with Kaleido 3 on an 8-inch screen. Previous devices were 10-inch. This is Kaleido Plus, so a previous generation of Kaleido. One other notable difference is this device includes a proprietary graphics chip, and this does not. So we'll get a sense of what that looks like. Let's go ahead and turn each on, and we'll see how the operating systems compare to each other. And you'll notice they're actually quite different. The operating system on the Air basically works off of this spine of selections, if you will, and there's an app drawer. You can actually customize what shows up here, but it's really navigating based on this left bar. The Mini is more about a traditional Android interface. So you've got your apps here. Oops. Actually, that's fine. And you can swipe, and you've also got widgets. Widgets are very much part of the Android experience. Both are running Android, but this has more of an Android interface, including the bottom tray here. My personal opinion, I think it's 6-to-1, half dozen to the other. Both are fine operating systems. You just kind of have to get comfortable with them. I'm not a fan of widgets on e-ink devices. I don't use them much on the Tab Ultra C, and I don't anticipate using them much here. Your mileage may vary. This is just down to personal preference. They're both perfectly acceptable operational interfaces. I want to point out that the screens, I'm trying to make sure the light, which is up above, you can see a little bit of the ring light here on top, and I'm trying to make sure it's even on both screens. It's roughly here in the middle, and you can tell that both screens are very similar to each other. The Mini is slightly lighter than the Air, but it's not by much, and you have to look at it for a little bit to see it. At first glance, they seem very similar to each other. Indeed, they both kind of have the same tone, a little bit of looking at it live, it's a little bit bluish gray. Looking on the video, I see more gray than the blue. So I'm not quite sure why there's a disparity there, but that's what I'm seeing. We're going to go through a few apps and we'll get a sense of how each performs and see how these devices differ. One thing I want to point out is I'm trying to make everything as even between the two devices as possible, just for this first impression comparison. So not every app, perchance, may be set to the most optimal settings, but they'll be the same. Now, the e-ink settings are different between the two devices. So on the Mini, everything is set to ultra fast. And then I've set all the sliders down to 0. In the app optimization, all the DPIs are set to 350. So just made a lot of effort to standardize that. And then over here on the Air, we set everything to A2, same situation. We tried to make everything as consistent as possible. The last thing I'll say is currently I have both devices set to do a refresh on 5 taps. So we'll see without taps what the ghosting is like for the first 4. And then the 5th tap, we'll see what the refresh looks like on each device. So that's something to look out for. Already, I can tell you, having pulled down the bars, I'm seeing some ghosting here on the Air, and I don't discern any ghosting here. So that's right off the bat, one difference between the two. All right, let's jump into our first app. And for that, we're going to go into Kobo. Here we go. And we're in the same book. I'm going to back out of this in a second so we can look at book covers. But first I wanted to do a check to see how they differed. All the settings of each book are identical, as I noted before, not only in the e-ink center, but within the app itself. So let's go ahead and see how they handle page turns. Yeah, both very snappy, no ghosting, which is what we've all come to expect with e-readers at this point, at least text-based e-reading. So both just a point. Actually, I found that I don't know if you noticed this in the film, but I found that the Air was just slightly faster than the Mini on this particular setting. However, they're both super fast, and I think that is definitely setting specific. Oh, this time the Mini was faster. There's not much that's different, and I'm sure I was in earlier settings where actually I found the Mini to be a little bit faster. So it depends on how you tweak it. But I would say for the most part, these are pretty comparable and very acceptable experiences. Let's go ahead and back out just to take a look at book covers. No, thank you. Okay, there we go. And just at a glance, both look good in my opinion, but you do see more detail in the Mini. In particular, I'm looking here. It's a lot bluer than the clouds around the tree, which I like. It's a little more pale over here. I think the sun over the planet is brighter, and you can see more of the halo than you can over here. If we go to the Lath of Heaven book, seems like it's a little more detailed here. Here it's a little, the color seems to be bleeding over a little bit. Not sure what's happening there. But overall, the experience is better on the Mini, but it doesn't blow me away. You notice the details when you're comparing one to the other, but they both look pretty good on their own. Let's scroll a little bit. Both are good at scrolling, a little smoother on the Mini. And you can see more covers here. Not all of them are the same, so it's harder to compare. These 4 are identical to these 4, but then below it's a little more mixed. So yeah, I think there is an advantage here to the Mini, but the Air, it holds its own with book covers. Okay, that's a quick overview of Kobo. Let's go ahead and swipe back. Okay, so again, no ghosting here, and there's ghosting here. Now I can eliminate this ghosting if I set the refresh rate on each to 1, and I'll do that a little bit later, so we'll make that comparison, but let's just hold it here for now. And the next app we're going to go into, let's go into Google News. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and refresh each one. One thing just to note is that because I have these devices at an angle, and particularly for the Air, where I'm reaching, sometimes my swipes won't catch, and that's just because of the awkwardness of how I'm reaching out to the device. So I found both devices to be very responsive, so don't consider that part of the inherent performance of each device. It's usually just because I have to reach out to get to it, and so that's the issue there. Again, both devices are set to the exact same, or at least as similar as I can get them, parameters. So the fact that this one is set where the image is filling the whole screen, and this one is broken down more into various stories is random, I guess. You can mix with the settings to obviously to increase the DPI. That would bring this to look closer to this, or vice versa. But we'll just take it as it is now. Let me go ahead and scroll. Take a look at that. Nice, smooth scrolling, very little ghosting. It's very nice. A little bit, you saw a little bit of ghosting as we're scrolling, but it resolves itself quickly. Okay, and then let's look at this device. Okay, you can definitely see this ghosting more in the background. Still looks quite good though. Pretty smooth. The Minis seem just a touch smoother, but by a very small margin. Hey, look at those two good buddies. Okay. So yeah. And here you can see some ghosting like right in here. Right there, and I don't see any ghosting here once I get to a stopping point. Let's go ahead and click on an article. All right, took a while to load there, but here we are. I saw a little bit of ghosting. It's gone now, but I saw a little bit on the image, but it's quickly resolved. There's some images down below. Let's just go ahead, and I don't know if I can find the same article, but I'll just go ahead and pick one. We'll do this guy. Yeah, there's the ghosting. It's pretty obvious. Still smooth scrolling. Images still look good. So I think we're seeing a theme here. We're seeing definitely seeing better images here, but not by a large margin from the Air. And we're certainly seeing more ghosting over here. So we're going to go into a comic book next. And so I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and change our refresh rates. And this is one of the things I wish both devices did better, frankly. We'll go home. See if I can get a good swipe on this thing. There we go. Remember, that's user error. We'll go into settings. And if we go to display, and then full refresh frequency, we're going to go ahead and set that to 1 tap, like so. And we'll do the same thing over here. The menu system is different. I'm going to go into settings, going to go into system display, and here it is. And we will go to one tap like so. Okay, we are ready to go. Let's go in to Kindle now on each device. And as many of you know, this free comic book day version of the Transformers Regeneration 1 is my favorite display comic book. And so here we go. So I've got both of these devices set to go cell by cell. So let's go through a few cells. Remember, we just set the refresh rate to 1, so we'll see what kind of flickering and a lingering ghosting we get with that setting. Let's see. So we are seeing some ghosting here, and we don't see any of that here. Whoops. There we go. Okay, let's see if we can get these to turn at the same time. Oh my goodness. There we go. All right. Okay, so I'm seeing, you can see some lines up in there, and I don't see any ghosting over here. Neither device is flashing. We do see ghosting on both devices. Black bars will always reveal ghosting. You see a little bit right in here. You see some right there. Over here, there's more ghosting, so it's going down the side. And then there's some over here too. But both images look really good. They're very comparable to each other. Let's take a look at some more images. Okay. See the ghosting over here, right up in here, and it's pretty non-existent on this one. So a little faster on the Mini. Animation's just a touch smoother. I think that's ghosting. I think those lines are ghosting. Let's do a refresh to validate that. Yep, so there was some ghosting there. We'll clear it out, so we'll reset. So no flashing on this one tap. It may be that going from cell to cell isn't necessarily activating the refresh. It might be page to page. I'm not sure. We'll look at another app and get a better sense of that. But certainly no flashing, which is nice. This is interesting. So here we see this tower is a little more on the greener side. Here it's a little more on the yellow side. Let me refresh and see if that changes that at all. No, not really. Yeah, so there is a little bit of a color difference. I haven't noticed much differences in colors. There is a higher pixel density on the Mini. This is at 150, and this is at, I think it's at 100. It might be a slightly higher than 100. I can't quite remember the exact value, but certainly denser here. I don't know if a comic book is the place that's going to pull that out, though. So I don't think the pixel density is really that much of a factor for these images, but that's my speculation. Just a couple more pages. The whites look pretty nice. No ghosting at all in either of them that I can discern. Images look good. You do see a little bit of ghosting up in here, and it's not present there. Definitely more, you can see a line right there that's ghosting, not present here. So very, very consistent performance between these two devices. Okay, so that's comic books using Kindle. Let's go ahead and get out of that if we can. All right, excellent. Let's shift over to Reddit as an example of social media. And the pages, remember we're still on one tap. Let's go ahead and scroll and see what that looks like. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so this is the same article. So let's click on that. There we go. Loaded about the same time. A little more ghosting over here. You can see the Grand Theft Auto. If you look closely enough, no ghosting here. That's just a reoccurrence of the theme, but good performance on both devices. Let's go ahead and scroll just a little bit more on each one. We'll scroll at the same time and see what that looks like. And again, I'll remind everyone that there's all sorts of settings that can be done on either device that can make the apps more optimized. We're really just trying to see a general impression of how these two devices differ. So there we go. So both scrolls, again, a little smoother on the Mini, but not bad on the Air. And we'll just go ahead and go into a couple. These are different articles, but loaded, approximately the same time, maybe a touch faster over here. But yeah, we see a continuation of the same themes that we've seen before. All right, for my last app, we're going to go into the note-taking app. And the note-taking app is identical between the two of these devices. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the colors that you can write in. And here I've indicated all the colors that are available. I did a little splotch and then wrote what the name of it was. We'll go over here and see the same thing on the Mini. And there it is. Let's go ahead and refresh both screens just in case that's a factor. I think all the colors are identical. There is one name change between the two, which I don't believe has any bearing, but this one is noted as blue and this one is noted as navy blue. Some of the colors on the Mini look a little closer to black. I'm looking at the blue over here and the chartreuse, and it's a very different experience over here. This one definitely looks blue. This one definitely looks, I guess that's what chartreuse is supposed to look like. That's interesting. Let's take a quick look. I don't remember that being the case when I was creating these images. So we'll go to the navy blue, which is here. Did that set take? Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, I don't know that.
Now you can ignore Alexa there. So here's, see this, it seems more blue when I write it out now. Is it refreshing to a darker color? Oh, it is. That's interesting. Let's see if the same thing is happening with chartreuse. Where is chartreuse? I think it's this guy. Yep. See now this looks much closer to this. If I refresh the screen, that is interesting. I did not notice that till just now. Fascinating. As I look at the other colors, they're much closer to each other. I don't see the same issue happening. So just with those two. Interesting. Okay. Not sure what that's about, but that is one difference. If chartreuse and blue are important to you, there might be some concerns in the note-taking app. Again, perhaps they can be addressed in the right settings. It's hard to say. Okay, for the last bit before we wrap up on this overview of the Mini, and particularly in comparison to the Air, I thought we would take a look at the front lighting. And let's go to apps to get a comparable screen. All of this has been done with no front lighting on. So let's go ahead and we'll turn on. We'll go all the way on blue lighting. And then this is a different interface. I actually kind of prefer the Air interface. We'll turn off warm light. Oops, just wanted to refresh. Okay, let me get out of here and I'll refresh the screen. Okay, so we're looking at full blue light right now. The light looks, for lack of a better term, just a little bit cleaner on this side, a little bit brighter. This is just a hair muted. Let's take a look at full strength on um, warm light. Again, I'm having to refresh. This looks very similar to me. I don't see any difference. The air might be slightly brighter in this case, and this might be a touch murkier. But these are subtle differences, either on cold or warm light. Honestly, these are very similar. Um, so yeah, so the front lighting is very nearly identical. Not a lot of differences there, and so there you go. Let's go ahead and go back, and I want to give some final thoughts before we wrap this video up. And there we go. So I think there's some pretty clear conclusions that we can draw from this. I think the first off, we can see very clearly the biggest difference between the two devices is how ghosting is handled on the Mini, and the ghosting is handled way better on the Mini and was present quite a bit on the Air. I can tell you that having used the Air, I was certainly aware of ghosting, but I never thought it was a huge issue. I thought it was actually pretty well managed, and I could always swipe up to refresh when needed. But kudos for the Mini for doing a better job in that area. Performance, slightly better on the Mini. It handled animations just a little bit smoother, but this is not a huge gap between these two devices. They both are pretty good. Same can be said for the images. I thought a lot of the colors and a lot of the images looked great on both devices. A little bit more detail on the Mini, but it didn't blow the Air away. So very interesting. So my conclusion, at least based on the very brief time that I've had, the Mini, is that it is the superior device. I think that people buying the Mini are going to really like the device. There's no issues I've seen other than the color issue that we noted, and I think that's a pretty small issue and probably resolvable. I just don't know how. And then, but the Air, for its part, holds up super well, actually. So if you have an Air device, is it worth upgrading to the Mini? I'm not so sure, and I guess it would really depend on your use case. If you're using the Air for, reading novels predominantly, I don't think there's any reason to upgrade. If you want to use the Air for all sorts of reading, including a lot of comics, you're going through scrolling sites like Google News and Reddit. Reddit looked pretty equal between the two. I thought Google News looked a little bit better on the Mini, my personal opinion, but not huge. If cost is an issue, and I haven't looked up to see what the Air is selling for now that the Mini is out, but if there's a significant enough cost gap, it might be worth still going for the Air over the Mini. It's that good that it's still worth considering. But I would still say that the overall, the Ultra, or the Mini rather, is the better device, and it performs better across the board. It's just the gap isn't always that huge. Okay, so those are my first impressions. I hope that was helpful for you. And one last thing, of course, is just my appeal to please subscribe if you like these videos. I do hope to do more comparisons. I'll probably do a comparison, for example, between the Mini and the Galley, which has Gallery 3. So that would be interesting. I have other videos coming up as well, and I'm looking at your comments, and if I see things that that you want me to cover, things that I may have missed, then I am making a list and I will get to those things. You might have put some comments on the first version of the video, but I haven't had a chance even to look at those comments yet. So I'm sorry. Hopefully I've covered what folks were asking for, but if not, I'll take notes there as well, and we'll add those into future videos. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. As I mentioned too, my hope for subscribing is I do hope to monetize one day, and that's not for the purposes of making money, because I will never make a lot of money at doing this, but I can make enough to reimburse some of my expenses, and that would open up to purchasing more devices in the future and reviewing them. So there's a benefit to me, and then there's a benefit to you. So if you would, and you're interested in the videos, please click both the subscribe and the like button. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful, and as always, leave comments, and I will try to answer them, and I hope you have a great day.